Ladies and gentlemen, what's up, everybody? This is Alan V, and you are listening to It's All Geek to Me here on 1590 AM WSIN Radio or on WSINradio.org. Welcome back. It's been a heck of a week here. It's good to be back on and talking to everybody. The last week's show. If not, where were you? But what I want to talk about is let's recap last week's show. Last week I did what was called the De-Quickening, a play on the quickening from the Highlander, where they cut the guy's head off and they get all his memories and strength, because there can only be one. And I talked about dumb headlines and just dumb random thoughts. So, before I get into one thing that played off last week here, let's all take a moment of silence for the Green Bay Packers season. Yeah, Brett Favre. Brett Favre. No, Aaron Rodgers went down with a season-ending, I think it was a broken collarbone. Nasty injury, nasty hit. I mean, it was a clean hit, but it was a nasty hit. And again, I'm not a Packers fan, but you can't hate Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's a solid player. So, yeah, they don't have much going on for them outside of Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully Hundley can show something. I mean, Rodgers sat under Favre for, 3-4 years? I think actually 5. So who knows? Maybe Hundley can put up something here. But 3 interceptions in half a game, I'm not feeling that. And while we're on the topic of devastating injuries, let's take another moment of silence here for the Boston Celtics. Specifically, Gordon Hayward, as he went down with looked like a shattered ankle. It was not pleasant looking. And he's done for the season. So, all that build-up, all that, they traded one guy that can't play defense for another guy that can't play defense, but the guy they got can score a little better. Hayward would have been nice on the corners or just as an outside shooter. Celtics, though, as much as I'm a Boston sports fan except for basketball because I grew up a Jordan fan. But so I still root for the Bulls, and their season's already a lost cause. I mean, their guys are knocking each other out, so literally. Clinton Portis knocked out Murakovic. I can't pronounce the dude's name. But, so yeah, my basketball season's over before it started. But the Celtics have a couple nice rookies, Tatum, and I can't remember the other guy's name, Jaylen Brown, I think. So I think they're going to be pretty good either way, but I just, sorry Boston fans. But let's get back on topic for the show. I try to cover a little bit of everything here. I do like sports. I just didn't want to make this an all sports. I kind of prefer to do talk and comedy. So, last week I did dumb headlines and just dumb random thoughts. So, after watching the Patriots in an ugly win over the Jets, but it's a win, so I'll take it. And yeah, I agree, that was a touchdown, not a fumble. But I'm not going to say that blew the game for the Jets because they only got that field goal because they had really good field position after New England basically had a 3-and-out after the touchback. But I was watching Monsters Inside Me. For those of you who don't know what that show is, it's not a horror show, not in the traditional sense. It is a show about parasites and other foreign objects found inside of people and their stories, and of course they're all dramatized. And I was doing classwork, so it was on in the background. And I had to pause because there was an episode of a teenage kid and his brother in Texas. And there's the mother, on camera, just generic blonde Texas lady. And again, the blonde's going to play a factor here. It's a joke, so relax, people. The kid ended up getting a welt on his leg, and it disappeared the next day, so the mother thought nothing of it. And then he broke out in rashes, and eventually all those rashes turned into lesions, and he was bleeding. He got leprosy. And I understood immediately when they said they were in Texas how he got leprosy, because it's the main reason why I don't own one of these animals as a pet, because I don't care if they're legal or not. I don't feel like getting leprosy. The mother, however, is on camera looks at the camera and makes the comment, "When I found out he had leprosy, I thought that was just a disease in the Bible. I didn't know it was real." All right, lady, what planet do you live on? Like, okay, blonde stereotype and religious Texan stereotype or religious conservative stereotype aside, I mean, I'm a Christian myself, so I could joke about some of this stuff because I see it and at times, and I always shake my head, so it's all good. And it's not a Christian thing specifically. I just think it's. I don't think it's a religious thing at all. I think just woman was just a dum dum. But how do you not know leprosy is real? Like, it's documented in other history books, so it exists outside the Bible, and it exists in medical journals. And if you haven't put two and two together, armadillos can carry leprosy. They're one of two animals or organisms here that natively carry it or function as carriers of it. Armadillos and humans are the other one. With armadillos, it doesn't tend to kill them, but it's easily transmittable to humans. And what happened was the two kids were out in the woods because their dog was barking, because, of course, and they came up on an armadillo that the dog went to town on, and the kid touched it, kicked it, and got blood on his shoe, and wiped the blood off with his hands, and that led to leprosy. So, ew. But I figured I couldn't not mention this after seeing the show and in light of what we had last week here. Just, oh my goodness, that is a dumb statement. Now, I can understand not knowing they come from armadillos. I'm a bit of an amateur zoologist. I find animals fascinating. Armadillos are one of three animals I find fascinating in particular. The honey badger is another one, and I have a couple more, so maybe three or four. I think my four. Armadillo, honey badger, Tasmanian devil, and duck-billed platypus. Those are just kind of those four weird animals that I find fascinating. But anyway, so that's enough of last week's show. What I want to talk about today, again, is, are video games art, or can video games be art? And obviously, the short answer is yes, but let's go into what kind of inspired me to go into this topic. I have a second one more so recently because it just came out the other day. But the first thing that inspired this for me was there, and I'm going to get into some controversy surrounding it here as well. Let's go the latter first. Most recently, the new South Park video game came out on Tuesday after being delayed for close to 2 years. It finally came out. And that alone was fascinating from an artistic standpoint. Okay, it's South Park. It's not like it's the most well-drawn. It's done intentionally, even with computers now in that cardboard cutout style or construction paper cutout style. It's the style of the show. It's, I guess, artistic choice or artistic flair, whatever you want to call it. But the video game plays out like an extended episode of the show, near perfect. I mean, the obvious parts where you're reminded it's a video game because of actions you have to do as a player, like fighting and things like that, that takes you out of it. But the entirety of it feels like the show. The voice acting, the script. The script for the game was originally 500 pages. And I had to cut that down, obviously, because it's a video game. 500 pages is like 4 2-hour movies, or close, 3 or 4 2-hour movies, basically. That's a little crazy. But that one inspired me because just it looks visually stunning. The humor, everything that's in the show was translated to this game. Which, if you are a gamer or at least familiar with video games, it's very rare when you have a licensed movie product or licensed TV show product be of any substantial quality. They're usually garbage. There's a joke. A couple of YouTubers really make a living on it. There was an old gaming and toy company called LJN, and they made their living taking movie and TV licenses and making horrible video games and actually some pretty cool toys and action figures out of the intellectual property. But my original inspiration and main focus for why I wanted to discuss video games as art was a game that came out a couple weeks ago at the end of September called Cuphead. For those of you who don't know, it is what they call a bullet hell or bullet shooter style game. It's essentially where you just have constant enemy fire, enemy attacks coming at you, and you have to dodge quickly and retaliate. They're typically intentionally difficult games, and this one is no exception, but it's animated, as in hand-drawn character animations in classic Max Fleischer 1930s Betty Boop style, except most of them in color. And it's gorgeous. Absolutely every part of this game is visually stunning. If it weren't for the fact that these things are morphing into other objects and attacking you, and you came in on this without knowing that someone was playing it, you would swear it was a cartoon. It is visually stunning. Now, the game was not without controversy, like art. Art is always the center of controversy. But there was two controversies, one bigger one and one kind of somebody wanted attention on Twitter. I'll go with the attention on Twitter one first. Because of the era of animation that the development team was inspired by and mimicking, the game got accused of being racist because 1930s were racist. Newsflash, every era of humanity has been racist. Now, the past, and the future. That's human beings. Somebody online just wanted attention, and a few other people who also wanted attention decided to hop on that bandwagon. Sorry, but that's not an argument. That's a bunch of crap. The game is gorgeous. And they go one step further. It's one thing to kind of capture an art style and then miss the feel and everything else of it. You just get like one aesthetic. The creators did a good job going with that art style by even having the characters that are voice acted all sound like characters from that era. Like the one that I could think of is there's a vendor who's a pig, and I forget his name because I've seen it, but I haven't played it because the game looks way too difficult. And I don't feel like cussing up and down at my monitor or my TV screen for several hours. But there was the old Tom and Jerry cartoon. I forget which one it was in particular, but at the end, Tom the cat looks at the camera and does the deep voice, the "Don't you believe it?" In that inspiration, the vendor, who's this pig character, has that voice. So it's just, these guys poured a lot of time and passion into this game. And to me, that makes something art. They put time and effort into it and created something for others to enjoy, which ultimately is the inspiration for a lot of art. Either you're creating something, taking time to make something, and present it for some kind of observable social value. So whether you're criticizing something of modern day culture or past culture, or there's time travel, maybe future culture, I would be a little concerned. But you're putting something out there to give off some kind of interpretation. The other controversy here, and this one was the bigger one, but I think people misconstrued it at first, and then the company, they created the problem. There was a game journalist. Some of you that are listening probably know what I'm talking about. His name was Dan. I forget the last name. Dean. He demoed this game at E3, which is like a big convention for gaming they do every year. One of the conventions. This is like the big one, like the Super Bowl, if you will, of gaming conventions. And he played the demo of the game, which is literally a tutorial of how to play the game, and he failed miserably. And he played it with the intent of giving like a preview of the game for the company he worked for, which was VentureBeat. And this is all publicly listed online. This ended up devolving on Twitter, and I'll get to that in a second. So I'm not giving out any info that's not publicly available. He struggled playing it. He brought the footage back to work, and he figured, okay, I can't use this. His job found it amusing and figured, hey, let's put up the I failed at this game 26-minute video. And that turned into everybody ganging up on the poor guy, saying, you're a games journalist, you need to be good at video games, which, by the way, is a dumb argument because you don't have to be good at football to call play-by-play or analyze football. That doesn't work in any other journalist profession. I don't have to be a politician to report on politics. I don't have to be a athlete to report on sports. Those are just two I can think of off the top of my head. I don't have to be a musician to have a critical view or to express interest in music. So why does it have to be that you're great at video games to be a games journalist? You should just, the main requirement is to know what you're talking about and sound good while doing it. So everybody, because it's the internet and everybody's anonymous, they tore into this poor guy on Twitter. Well, the company he worked for under their own name, like under their Twitter handle for the company, so basically somebody in their public relations, went on a tirade responding to people, calling them all out on their mean comments, which, okay, I'm fine with that. But it devolved into where they started talking about, well, they need to make games that appeal to all skill levels. Otherwise, you're ostracizing people and pushing people away. You're skill shaming. And that's where the controversy really came in. Skill shaming, guys? No, that means you just suck at the game. I didn't buy Cuphead because I looked at people playing it and knew I wouldn't be good at it, and it's not my type of game to play. It's gorgeous. I can watch people play it, but I know I'm not going to be good at it, and I don't really have the time in my life to spend hours on end to make myself good at it, so I didn't buy it. But there's no, I'm being discriminated against. That's my choice. Like, what's this nonsense? So yeah, those are my two inspirations. My main one was Cuphead, and then when the South Park game came out, I just was going to play it for 20 minutes and then do schoolwork and get to the show, start preparing stuff for the show. And then 5 hours later, I'm laughing hysterically and enjoying myself. But yeah, so we're going to go into video games as art. A couple things we're going to talk about. I'm going to go into just the concept and the evolution of video games. And I wanted to talk about graphics going from like little blocky pixels on like the Atari and the old cathode tubes to vector graphics and so on. But it's kind of hard to talk about graphics on an Audible-based show. So we're going to do music, and then if time permits, I'm going to go into bad voice acting in games because it's some funny stuff. But before I get into kind of the beginning of this piece here, we'll go ahead and take our first obligatory music break. And the first track we're going to play is from an artist known as, might pronounce this wrong and I apologize, Beto Hale, and it's the title track, Orbs of Light. And again, you're listening to It's All Geek to Me with Alan V on WSIN Radio 1590 AM and WSINradio.org.
Untouched by hate and fear.
right, ladies and gentlemen, again, you're listening to It's All Geek to Me with your host, Alan V. This is WSIN Radio, 1590 AM, or online at WSINradio.org. And we're talking about video games as art. Well, now we are, as I kind of got through my intro there. All right, so what do I mean by video games being art? Art is basically anything you're creating for the public or others to have some level of experience or reaction from. And historically, we kind of look at traditionally, I shouldn't say historically, I should say traditionally, so we'll go with that. We look at like paintings, classical music, and classical literature, and all these pseudo-academic stuff as art. And we kind of ignore that TV, movies, and even video games are art. It's something being created, something, whether it's a stroke of a paintbrush or someone's personal line of coding, or as we're going to go into here, somebody composing, orchestrating music within a computer program or video game. That is someone putting something out there for others to have a response or stimuli to. Usually with video games is to invoke some kind of emotion, entertainment, horror, laughter, same as movies and TV, depending on the type of show, movie, or game that you're involved with. Again, I'd love to go into graphical progression over the years because it's quite an interesting topic, but this is a radio show, so I can look at a screen and describe blocks to you in a certain pattern, or hexagons and polygons and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I think music is the better way to go here, which is what we're going to do. So what we had early on in the history of video games is, let's go with consoles, because I can do a whole episode on the evolution of computers and based on the audio produced within the game and the technologies that improved, sound cards and whatnot. So that's a whole nother can of worms. But you had it's kind of hard because you think what's the first game everybody knows of? It's arguably not the first game ever made, but it's kind of recognized as it, so I'll go with it. Everybody thinks of Pong, and Pong, there really wasn't music. It was just the black screen, the white objects, the square ball, because pixels, and the noise, the sound effects of the ball hitting the paddles and going back and forth. But even early in the infancy, you had during the early video game era, the late 70s, everybody started getting a little bit of Pac-Man fever, and games kind of evolved. Actually, Pac-Man was kind of the one that really brought games into the forefront. And along with that, we had other, you had Atari, ColecoVision, and Television, all these different consoles competing, because every generation there were certain competitors. But if we take something like Atari, and again, we'll go, I'm going to play a little bit. I probably won't play all of every song because that'd be a little too time consuming. But I will go through, and here's like Frogger, and we'll play a little bit of this and just kind of go down a list of the evolution from each generation of games, the individual composition that went into it, and just the evolution. My favorite era is the 16-bit era, which would be like Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and all that. The audio quality of the technology was much better, and these guys were able to, and gals were able to do much more orchestra and actually compose music in a digital format. And to me, it's nostalgic. As you hear some of these, I know for me, it's going to be a lot of nostalgia, take me back to my childhood. My parents are probably going to be bashing their head against the wall because they're going to remember hearing this stuff for hours on end from the family room as I was playing video games. And some of you might have the same reaction, and some of you just might invoke some nostalgic reaction. Because again, this is all good stuff. But here's the first one here. I'm going to play a little bit of Frogger. Okay, for those of you that don't know, I don't remember the name of it, but that's actually a Japanese, little song or nursery rhyme type of thing. So it's a well-known Japanese tune. And again, this was taking something that was pre-written or pre-created and digitizing it, putting it into a format that would work with the hardware. So this is kind of where we started, where there wasn't a lot of unique or well-orchestrated. It was a lot of, little blorps and blips and or taking something that's pre-existing and converting it into a format that would work with the technology at the time. But then we go up into the 8-bit era, your Nintendo, your Sega Master System, and that kind of stuff. And things got where there was full-on music, albeit it's still that electronic and, the bleeps and bloops, but a lot more composed. You can definitely tell there's an evolution here. And again, this is where it really starts taking off as being an art. People are composing, writing, creating, editing actual music to create atmosphere and ambiance. And this particular song, it's from Mega Man 2. This one here, it's during when you get to the end of the game. So you're getting ready to fight the final boss. It's basically the first stage of the final boss stage. And it's just this really intense music. This one I absolutely love. So I'm going to play a little bit longer on this one because this is just a classic to me. That playing in the background. You notice that invokes some emotion of like some intense major moment happening. And this is where we really started evolving as an art form to invoke story or create atmosphere, ambiance, which is something that's artistic. Turn that down. It's distracting. That's really where in movies and TV shows where, a good Foley artist or a good sound director, they create this atmosphere using music, using sounds. And video games are no different. This art form evolved to start expressing ambience, start creating expectations. And honestly, this one's a classic here. It's the Legend of Zelda theme. Well, as soon as I get the advertisement off of YouTube. You take something like this, and this is kind of, as it builds up, it's creating an atmosphere, an expectation of something's about to happen. And it's working within the limitations of the technology of the time. There's another one I could just listen to because this is just total nostalgia for me. More so as I build up here. Okay, so again, you're seeing kind of, as I started with Frogger, where it was, hey, let's at least show that we could, the technology and the abilities there to take something pre-existing, a nice little shanty from Japan, that none of us in the 80s, or even 90s really knew. Pre-internet, you didn't know what that song was from. That was the Frogger song. I mean, it was recognizable. If you heard it, walking by an arcade or a convenience store, and you got to remember, folks, so some of you that are younger, some of you that are just don't remember, arcades back in the day were everywhere. In the 80s, it was a heyday. You had your coke-fueled businessmen, you had your as finger quotes, juvenile delinquents. You had everybody at the arcades. And then slowly the cabinets expanded outside the traditional arcades, and they were popping up at convenience stores. I remember a Street Fighter arcade at Caldor's in Waterbury as a kid. Yeah, I'm going back. There was a Street Fighter 2 cabinet at Bradley's, going back. So yeah, this is nostalgic. So, I mean, this stuff kind of started going out, and there was things that you heard that were recognizable. And as we go on, too, a lot of this stuff has become modern-day pop culture, modern-day memes, because I got one of those coming up here, too. But let's go into the next era, the next evolution in the technology to the 16-bit era. Now you can hear there's more instruments involved, deeper tones, it's a richer sound. Again, this isn't just sticking a bunch of loops and loops together. This is an evolution of the art form. This is somebody composed this. And that was from Mega Man X. That's extremely nostalgic because I think that game, as an introduction to the next generation of consoles, really just showed you to shift more 90s, where it was more edge, more intense. So it definitely was a product at the time. And to me, it's timeless because it's still well done. And then we're going to go into probably my favorite video game of all time, Chrono Trigger, and just what orchestrated with a chorus really sounds like once this commercial skips. All these I have queued up on YouTube because it's easier to work with. And here's kind of where you can see as video games became more popular. Ironically, started out as more adult and then kind of became the kids thing. As my generation got older, the games got a little more mature, and I'm not talking about Grand Theft Auto's mature, but like more involved, more deep story, and the music evolved to kind of reflect more atmosphere. And you can kind of hear that there's more to this. This is actually composed, and Yasunori Matsuda was the main composer, creator of the music. But this was done with an actual orchestra and then basically brought in and coded the work with the music sound chip of the Super Nintendo and all that fun stuff. But I've actually taken the soundtrack to this game and listened to it in the background while doing other things. This one's just more mellow and peaceful, so I went with this, but there are more intense and probably a little more fun music I can go with here. But yeah, you could kind of see that, like any art form, video games evolved over time. I mean, both graphically and with the technology, because as technology changes, everything changes with it. If you look at music, you had acoustic guitar, and then when the electric guitar came out, there was resistance. That's the devil's music and all that kind of stuff, because change, and we know how people are with that. And not necessarily that embracing all change is good, because, there's something to be said about the old stuff, too. Like, even now with modern video games where we have songs from major music artists and up-and-coming artists, I still kind of prefer to go back and listen to when they actually created music to build atmosphere and tension and build the moment in a game. But, you had the acoustic guitar, and you had the electric guitar. And then in the 70s, you had, out of England, came the New Romance movement, which what that translated to us here in the States was you started getting the new wave and dark wave movement. So a lot of your 80s synth bands were birthed out of the New Romance movement, which in turn was birthed out of another movement in Germany. So they're all tied, but it's just as technology changes, people do creative things with it, which is awesome. If you look at early movies, they were basically and again, nothing wrong with silent films. I'm not talking about like the silent films with Buster Keaton and that kind of stuff. But early movies were, hey, let me film this woman breastfeeding. It was just, we didn't know what to do with the art form. So as time went on and expectations were set and, different, especially I'm a comm major and I'm in a film and television production program, so I can go on a whole tangent on just how shot style and things like that are just such an essential part to the filmmaking process. I'm not going to go into that tonight. I don't have 5 hours. But it's kind of the same thing. As the technology advanced, ideas and concepts advanced and became standard. And it just transcends all forms of media. And video games, like it or not, are a form of media. Some people will dismiss it as just nonsense. I know... I can't even say I know my parents' generation. I mean, I'm in my 30s, but I had former coworkers that were my parents' age that were gamers and Trekkies and all that stuff. So I don't think it's a generational thing. Side note, because so many people equate gaming with small children, just want to give you all a heads up. The average age of a gamer in America, at least America, I can't vouch for other countries. The average age of a gamer in America is 35. Not 10. I'm like, we treat video games and animation as this kids thing for no other reason than somebody just decided, hey, there should be a kids thing, when statistically that notion's not valid. But what we're going to go to next here, you might know this one because it's made the rounds on the internet as a running meme. This was from the video game that defined or created the modern fighting genre. That's Street Fighter 2, and here we go with Guile's theme. This one I don't think is necessarily an evolution of anything, but I like it, and this has become a running meme on the internet, like beyond viral, so I just figured I'd throw this in here. And again, this does kind of invoke the idea of that kind of like a climax is coming, basically. That's about the closest I can kind of take from it, just hearing it. But then I have one more here, and this was really big in the 16-bit era. And then we're jumping up to, I'll speed through this here, to more eras here. So we're going to go ahead and, because I'm cutting down on time and I want to get to other stuff here. Actually, what will do is, let's play this one real quick. This is from a little-known game called Donkey Kong Country. This game visually pushed the envelope for what video games could do at the time. Kudos to Rare for what they were able to do here on the Super Nintendo and the 16-bit era. And again, this is all orchestra music too, music they composed. And again, this is the end boss fight. So it's on a pirate ship. So it's got like the naval feel and the jungle feel. And, you know, you got the drum beat and the music, and it's indicating some level of tension. But this is also one where I've died so many times on the boss because I got distracted grooving to the music as a kid, so yeah. But let's jump ahead a little for time's sake. Alright, so let's go ahead as we're going up through the different eras here in gaming. Let's see. So we kind of went where they're working with the hardware at the time, which obviously pre-CD technology, there was a limitation of what we can do with music and just storage on cartridge, on a floppy disk and things like that. And then you kind of had the CD came out, and as the CD was perfected, it was adopted in the video game format, allowing for, and this is where it really started taking off as an art form for both. You had full motion video, which was a huge technological leap at the time, which was where you had live mode. You either could do live video, not live, but, you know, film video. So it wasn't like using little pixels and polygons to necessarily tell a story. This was like fully, there we go, this is what I wanted, fully 3D rendered video. And that evolved over time. Early full motion videos were just people and interacting with an environment, and they would stick like the game on a blue screen in the background and hope it looks good. But that evolved into a much more complex system here, where we had, you know, fully 3D models of game characters, and then the music evolved greatly in this era, where you started getting CD quality music. And here's one from Wild Arms, which was a Western-themed role-playing game. I've never played this, but I've heard of it, and it's supposedly a really good series. You can hear actual instruments. They don't sound like a digitized version of an instrument. So as you're getting the more orchestral music, you're getting the actual authentic sound from it. Not quite there yet, but as it evolved. And you can argue that something like this that was composed for a video game, of all things, warrants being in the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which they do a exhibit every year. So even like I said, the Smithsonian kind of acknowledges video games in art form. The Supreme Court has acknowledged it as an art form, and I'm just, because I can't give you the full picture with being audio only, I'm giving you kind of what I can, which is the music and the evolution. And I got one more I'll do here, and then we're going to do our second obligatory song break, and then close out tonight having some fun. I got a whole bunch of how not to art in video games, which is like the advent of voice acting, and just how much like when early Japanese animation was brought over, and just Japanese stuff in general, or international stuff where we dub it and we didn't treat it with any respect or care and just threw everybody at the studio as an actor. We kind of had that same thing with the video games. So this is some really funny stuff. So let's get one more in here. And this one I'm going to pull up. I'll skip that one. Let's pause. This is from the more recent generation of video games where this. Those of you that have played Smash Brothers will recognize that it's the main theme from Smash Brothers Brawl. But this is very just, I think, a good song that demonstrates the evolution. Now think back to Atari, where it was the da-na-na-na-na, the very raspy, very high-pitched, very computerized noise, and then you take something like this. And again, that is a fully composed, full orchestra, chorus, singers, fully composed song for a video game. It's just something that you would go to a symphony hall to hear being done for a video game. And some of you might be going, oh, hey, that's a waste. But to me, that's awesome. Like, we've gone from just, hey, let's throw in something in just for background noise to full-on orchestra music created to just exactly for the game. That's music you can listen to in confidence outside the game and not get looked at like you're crazy. Now, like I said, I've listened to the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, but I probably wouldn't be listening to that out in public or cue that up at the gym or something for other people to hear, because it's still, while I appreciate it, you take something like the Smash Brothers theme here, where it's a full-on orchestra, whether you like classical style or orchestra music or not, you can appreciate it. But we're going to take our last obligatory music break after playing all this music. And when we come back, we're going to go play some clips and just laugh at some really bad voice acting. Just that really makes you appreciate how far we've come. And again, It's All Geek to Me. You're listening to WSIN Radio 1590 AM or online at WSINradio.org.
The sun comes up over the Brooklyn Bridge. A brand new day, I got so much to give. These days it's hard to sleep, got a fire, it's burning in me, I won't stop now. I'm gonna make my mark, even when trouble starts, I won't back down. You're gonna see me like New York graffiti. I put my name up on the wall.
right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's All Geek to Me with your host, Alan V. And that was by Katie Costello from the album Twice the Love, and the song was called, obviously, New York Graffiti. Interesting. Again, I to be honest, I don't know half these artists when I pick them. As I say, obligatory music break. Both of those are pretty good, and not necessarily my style, but I think they're both decent artists, and hey, if you liked it, check them out. But yeah, we're back. I'm already laughing because I already have the first video queued up. So, as I said before, up until the inception, or not inception, the adoption, there we go. The adoption of the compact disc or CD, and then later the DVD and so on, very limited on storage space. So graphics weren't always the prettiest. They kind of had to recycle pixels and polygons. And then when CDs came out, they discovered they can store a whole lot more data on these discs. And that included music, which we went over, a couple of the songs there. And then with that, they started doing animated cutscenes or live action cutscenes with voice acting. And oh boy, if there's an argument against video games being art, I got a few here for you. While I agree that art's subjective, so one thing I might find atrocious, someone else might think is fascinating, and vice versa. You may have not appreciated anything I just played on the last segment, and I don't apologize, because hey, my show. Glad you're with me. I enjoy having everybody with me here each and every Thursday night. And so let's get into this show here. This is from this is one of the early games with animated cutscenes and voice acting, and this company will be on the list a couple times. This is from our friends over at Capcom, and I'm sure if any of you are a gamer of any sort or just follow random videos on YouTube, you have come across this one, which is from Mega Man 8. Just let's take a listen.
These seems to be energy resources. But I've never seen this type on Earth. I don't know where this energy came from, but cannot let it fall into Dr. Wowie's hands. You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
But where is Dr.
Yeah. Who let their drunk grandfather record voice lines for a video game? Yeah, you heard that right. Obviously Mega Man. It's the video game about the little blue robot that has to fight the other 8 robots and defeat the Dr. Wily, the main villain. What you heard there was, and I queued out with Mega Man's voice because it's so high-pitched, it's excruciating. But, and it doesn't fit the character at all, which makes it funny. That was somebody doing a reading of Dr. Light, who's the creator, and they're basically based on Thomas Jefferson and Albert Einstein, the good doctor and bad doctor, the 2 scientists. But, so, radar room, energy emissions, what Mega Man? It's like, how is that the good take? Like, I want to hear the other takes, if they did any, just to see how bad this was. And since we're running that low on time here, I'm going to jump around to a couple that I really did enjoy. Again, here comes, I think, honestly, as I look at this, my list is almost 90% Capcom. So that tells you what studios really didn't take the art of voice acting seriously. So let's pull up this one.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close.
Oh, Barry!
This is from Resident Evil.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
Here's another one from the
Find
same
anything,
game.
Jill?
Nothing. What is this all about? I can't figure it out at all.
Beats me, too.
Now it's Wesker's time to disappear. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it can't be helped. Let's search for him separately. I'll check the dining room again.
Okay, I'll try the door on the opposite side.
This mansion is gigantic. We could get into trouble if we get lost. We should start from the first floor, okay? And... Jill, Here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
Folks, wow. I have no words. Like, do you have any respect for what you're making? Yeah, okay. So these are both from the same game, both from the original Resident Evil, which game-wise is considered a cult classic. It helped establish what is known as this survival horror genre. Now, I can argue there were other games previous to the PlayStation era that this came out on, but they didn't really make it over to Western audiences, like Clock Tower. So we'll go with this really is what introduced Americans to the survival horror genre, and Europeans. And this is arguably more popular. But in a game where you're supposed to have this tension because there's a zombie outbreak and you're stuck in this unknown mansion, all tension is thwarted by Jill Sandwich and Master of Unlocking. Like, the music does really good at setting ambiance. There are nice jump scares and things like that, and cutscenes that really set the atmosphere, and then you're completely removed with the voice acting. It's essentially like having a movie that's incredibly atmospheric, but none of the actors are trying. Or basically, if The Room or Birdemic had a really good score and really good set, and the actors just ruined everything. I will be doing a bad movie beatdown show in the near future, because it's fun. Or at least a segment. But the next one. So, okay, now we're getting into territory where there's actual professionals. This is from NBA 2K15. They got actual NBA players to voice act what they call My Career Mode, where you create a player and go through this fictitious scenario. And this is the voice acting we got out of a couple of professional athletes, and this is even worse and hilarious.
You're right. He's right. We got too much talent, and we work too hard to be playing like this. We got to get this train right back on track, real quick like.
That's right. We all have that attitude. The train will be rolling in no time. Let's do it.
The ball hit me in the head. All right. Dude, did you have a stroke right before doing the shoot? Like, what was that? I'm confused. That was atrocious. Again, these are professional athletes, not necessarily actors. Even though in the 90s we tried to force professional athletes into acting by putting Shaquille O'Neal in everything they could think of, and making him a rapper, and he failed at both. He does all right at commercials because reading one or two lines and holding a product up is kind of hard to screw up. But, Shazam was horrible. Yeah, pretty much Steel was horrible, so everything Shaquille O'Neal was in was horrible. Nothing against him, it's just if you're not an actor, you're not an actor. We do this a lot with athletes and other people that are, try to break them outside their medium. I can go, and in a couple weeks I'm going to do a wrestling show, so if I get around to this part of it, I can talk about wrestlers that worked or didn't work in movies. Here, spoiler warning, pretty much the only one that's worked as an actor is Dwayne Johnson or The Rock. But I got one more here I'm going to do as we're getting down to the end of the hour. This is a game called Chaos Wars. There's a little story here. This was a Japanese game that was imported, and the CEO of the company that did the import didn't want to hire anybody, so he hired all his family members to read the voice lines. And this is some incredibly bad but hilarious stuff. I think I have it queued up in the right spot. There's somebody that even does the vocals for a monster, and it sounds atrocious, but even gets the sound he's supposed to make wrong. So enjoy.
How do I get back to Tokyo?
What's Tokyo?
The world I
laundry?
came from. How do I get back to where I came from?
Oh, that. Well, the thing is...
Another one!
Okay. Was what's a monster? And the line was supposed to be Kiki. So not only was it horribly read, it was read wrong. So like double fail. And yeah, those are all family members. So for not being voice actors, I can't give them too much criticism. But my goodness, that's some of the worst line reading I've ever seen. And I'll do one more here before I close out the show. And this one is from a more recent game. It's one of the Elder Scrolls games, which is by Bethesda. And these are big, open world, overarching, giant RPG style games. This is from Oblivion, which is not the most recent. It's the one before that. So this is like 2006, 7, 8, somewhere around there. This is where they read the line. It's so little effort was put into it, the person corrects themselves and rereads the line, and they didn't take the cutout. I can't believe this is a thing. And there's more games where this has been done in, but this is hilarious. Oops, and let's get that queued up for you. All right, here we go.
I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University, the Imperial Legion compound, and the temple all on the same night. Wait a minute, let me do that one again. I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University, the Imperial Legion compound, and the temple all on the same night.
Let me do that again. Yeah, so as much as I played stuff to kind of demonstrate how video games musically evolved over the years from just little shanties and jingles to catch your attention to epic songs to create ambiance and atmosphere. And if I had more time, I could certainly go through and even take each aspect of it, ambiance, atmosphere, emotion, and really just give you piece after piece of just how this has been done over the years in such an amazing way. But we're running out of time here tonight. I want to thank you all for tuning in with me here. It's been a pleasure talking with you, or talking to you. Again, I'm on next Thursday again, same time, between 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you are listening to WSIN Radio, 1590 AM, or WSINradio.org. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is thelastword2016, and I do a wrestling podcast on the side on YouTube, and you can find that under the channel name Chocobo Chokeslam. And I have one more treat, like last week when I closed out with the amazing Princes of the Universe song by Queen, after I talked about Highlander, I mentioned Pac-Man Fever and how that took America in the late 70s and early 80s as video games took off as a boom. Well, what I got here for you is Buckner and Garcia, the song Pac-Man Fever. Enjoy. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to talking with you guys and gals next week. Again, this has been It's All Geek to me. I'm Alan.